G'day everyone, welcome to this week's Life on the Hulls, and a big week coming up. I've got a lot of work to be done up on the bow. I'm also going to start to install our exhaust system, our gooseneck mufflers and the like. So lots going on, and it actually got us to the point where we were able, back a couple of months ago, to fire up our engines.
Okay, let's go. Get it going.
So all that's coming up as we come forward. Now, a few comments, in fact there was a lot of comments last week about the fact that I'm a few months behind on our videos. Now that is actually something that every YouTuber does that, and there's a very good reason why we do that, and for security obviously of my family, and secondly for the wider content of the area here, the industrial estate here. We try to keep relevant stuff a few months ago, so there's a higher security aspect to the way that we produce our videos. And another thing I'd like to ask is that if you can just let the videos run and not fast forward too much. It might be great for you to get through the video quickly, but it does kill the metrics of our video and stops it getting put out to other people that may have otherwise not seen it. So thanks for watching, we really appreciate it. Thanks for the patrons, you guys. Without you guys there'd be no videos. So thank you very much. Let's get into it. Yesterday I came in and added about 3 coats of gel coat and then a lower flow coat to my bow seam along here. And today I've come in and I've been on the torture board for about an hour, just fine tuning it down. Now I haven't even gotten to the front of it yet along here, but when I get to that, that's going to have to be done with the machine, because I don't think I can possibly get up the ladder and put that much force on it. But I've just tied it up along the front here, all the way along the front. It's now physically joined and it's all faired. I've faired it twice. I've also done around the anchor roller mount as well, and snubby longeron I'm going to call it, but it's not really a longeron. But at the end of the day, I've got that all nice and smooth. Now I'm going to go down to underneath, bring my compressor up, get the pneumatic DAR on it, and just sand down all the material before I start to fair it with a torture board, and that should start to look ready for spray up. So it's actually been, it's not that hot, it's about 21 degrees, and look at the state of me, 21 degrees and I'm still sweating like a dog, and I guess it's good for me, but I can't convince myself that it is when I'm this age pumping away with a torture board. But that's boat building. My original intent was to add a bow cap that Janet had made some months ago. These would replicate the shape of the aluminium gunnel rail that we'd installed, ultimately to be glued in place and finish the bows rather quickly. Well, that wasn't to be. I've chosen to laminate and fair the bow seam on both sides, thereby joining the hull and deck and having a white faired, more modern look. A lot of work to do this, but it'll certainly make for a much nicer look going forward. Yesterday was murder. I spent all day here fairing the forebeam, fairing the ends of the bows, and removed all the material on the seam so that I can actually glass them together, and I'm actually going to fair these smooth. And I've already done the other side there, so I'm going to get up now and just get this last part done, get it actually laminated in, and that'll make for a nice faired bow bit of a problem with this tent. It keeps bumping into me. It's driving me nuts with the wind today. I really think this is going to be the best solution, is having this nice, fair, white, smooth bow. Alright, starboard side's looking really good. That's going to take bugger all fairing to get that sorted. And I've got a great result. It's nice and smooth. A little bit of fairing, and I'm going to make a foam end that extends the same profile as this. I'll make that extend right up to about here to end the gunnel rail, and then it'll go into fairing. So a little bit of work to do, but that's going to look so much better. Basically need to give that a few hours to set up, come in and fair it, and then I can continue the fairing all the way along here. I've still got another coat to put on before I'm going to spray again. Over here, I'm already done the outboard side. I'm going to do the inside now just to get it all done, and then we're pretty much ready to go on the whole friggin' bow. And that has been over 4 months in the making to get this together. It's not the only thing I've done, but it certainly has taken around 4 months to do the whole thing. Nothing happens in a week by week basis here. Everything's over months. Could it actually be that I'm getting to the fun bit? It's been a while, I'll tell you. Just gone upstairs and pulled out a few things. I've bought some Veda splash stop fuel sort of preventers, I guess you'd call it. And having been in the dive industry for almost 30 years, I guess, I've seen a lot of ad hoc fueling, and even charter boats that we've chartered up in the Whitsundays, when we go to refuel them, how often the fuel spills over the top and goes down the side of the boat, and you racing around to get diesel pads and the like to try to catch it before it goes in the water. Inevitably, it's going to go in the water. I've actually bought these Veda splash stops, and the idea is that there's an overflow. So the chances of it overflowing down the side of the boat is minimal, because it has a breather and also flows back into the tank. Any excess will actually flow over into a reservoir and ultimately get caught up. Fitting them is no easy feat. It says that it's designed for a 38mm inlet, but that is not so. The top of this does not quite fit my stainless inlets, or our filler inlets, so I'm going to have to ream that out a little bit. It does actually fit into the gasket, but it doesn't fit into the actual nut on the top. So there's going to be a little bit of work there. Now the other thing too is that I have allowed on my filler section here, right here, room for one, two. And the reason why I've done that is I'm going to have my port side filler at the front, and potentially later on a starboard fuel filler on both sides. Now that's going to create a lot of plumbing within the boat, but I have allowed this area here to have 2 inlets, and I think that's very important to do that, because especially around here we don't have bowsers to be able to fill with. We're often filling from an IBC or a 1 ton container on the back of our pickup trucks, and that's not going to be great. Now it's all right when you go into a marina when they've got an extended hose that'll go all the way to the other side, but that's an issue where we are here. You technically have to almost turn the boat around and go through all that, putting the fenders on the side and turning the boat around and all that hoo-ha. I would rather to be able to fill it directly from one side or the other. So I intend to do that eventually, but that's not something I need to worry about right now. I just need to get one filler in, one fuel splash top, and get that plumbed in so I can start to think about how I'm going to rig the rest of it. Now, young Zach and Ellen are leaving us in 3 weeks and moving to Tasmania to live, which is, effectively it's overseas, even though, we consider them to be part of Australia, but it is still on the other side of Bass Strait, which is a notorious waterway, and I'm not going to be sailing down there anytime soon, not in the next couple of years probably anyway, but before he leaves, Zach and I intend to get our motors turned over. And that means that they're going to be ticking over. They'll have water running to them. That means I need to install the exhaust system. Also need to install the gauges, and they're going to go in permanently and attach to the loom and basically be able to turn the motors over, give them a quick start, make sure they run, make sure that everything's working, check all the systems before he leaves, because he's pretty keen because he did all the initial wiring with me. First things first, I need to install the Vatus gooseneck muffler. Now I haven't just bought a gooseneck, I've actually bought a gooseneck muffler, and this is going to go down in my hull extension right here. This entire section is separate to the rest of the boat, so whatever happens here basically is separate to the engine room, separate to the bilge. I've actually got separate bilge system in here, bilge pump in here, in case we get any water in here. This is technically just a rudder and exhaust compartment and storage. So this gooseneck, if you have a look at here, we've got the engine, and essentially we're running down to an NLP 75, and then I won't be using another muffler system here or another water lock, but then I'll be going up to the gooseneck muffler and then out. So I've got the outlet, I've got the goosenecks, I'm going to start on installing those as well. Okay, we'll get our gooseneck waterlock muffler, and I've bought the transom exhaust connection as well. It's a 75mm exhaust hose on our boat, so it's pretty substantial, and I'm going to mount this around about 30 centimeters above waterline. We really don't want this under the water. Obviously we don't want the outlet here to ever go underwater, because we don't want water shooting back up through the muffler. That's the whole idea of this, is to keep water from siphoning back in, and the whole idea of these new Vatus mufflers is to keep the thing nice and quiet. And basically this is going to require a 75mm hole bored in the side of the boat down there. I was trying to avoid doing it until I get the finish, get the spray done on the side, and I think I'll just drill the hole and get it all dry fitted and then come back and mount it properly later on. There's quite a few rules installing exhaust systems. I've already bought a 20cm riser for our Yanmar motors, because my first waterlock muffler, the NLP 75 from Vatus, is actually going to be sitting below water level. Well, we then need to make sure that our exhaust originates at least 30 centimeters above that waterlock muffler to ensure that we don't end up with siphoning back into our motor. Now, because we have a 75mm tube, there is a high likelihood there's going to be a lot of water stored, and there's quite a lot of calculations goes into that, and I think it's around about 3 litres per metre of hose, and I'm going to have quite a bit of exhaust hose, so that's a lot of water being held within the exhaust hose. So I think it's about 3 litres per metre of hose, so you have to take that into account when deciding on your muffler system. So I bought the 75mm one, obviously, to make sure that it firstly matches my motor, but secondly matches the capacity of the output of the motor. So we've got pretty clear instructions, can't be much easier than that. I still can't believe that I'm going to be installing something so important with a couple of plastic clips and a bloody couple of cable ties. I mean, that just does my head in that it's not a stainless bracket, but I think I'll be working on something like that a bit later on. So when you start fitting stuff like exhaust systems, you realise how little room you've actually got. And I'm starting to realise that I haven't actually got a hell of a lot of room in here. But anyway, we'll work on it. As you can see, this is quite a large system, and it rotates. The top and the bottom will actually rotate through 360 degrees, so fitting it just isn't an issue. I can have my exhaust system come in through here and then have it exit here. So I basically have to work out where that's going to be. Now, I've also got the fuel lines coming down here, so I do need to consider constricting their movement with the splash top up in there. So I've actually got my fuel inlet up there, so the further back I can place it, back here, gives me more room to route my exhaust, and the exhaust is going to come through a hole in the bulkhead here. I don't really need to create brackets and things to hold these exhaust systems, because essentially it's going to be held by virtue of the physical bulkhead anyway. Okay, my water line is here, essentially just on this chine here. We believe that to be the water line of the last boat, so it could be slightly different here on this boat, but it's around about here, so I need to go at least 45 centimetres from that area there. So it needs to be no lower than where the top of the tape is there. The only problem is I want the exhaust to be... It's been down in the sugar scoop and I'm having some problems. The problem is my Vetus gooseneck muffler is a bit too long and a bit too friggin' round or fat to be able to fit up under this combing here. Now that's creating a few problems for me, i.e. I'm trying to get my exhaust well above the waterline, and the waterline is sort of determined but undetermined. You know, I've built this boat differently. You just don't know what the exact waterline is going to be, so you've got to almost take a punt on where you think it should be. So as a result, I've had 4 or 5 iterations as to where I'm going to put it, and I've come to the conclusion, and the problem is not so much the muffler, it's this stuff. This 75mm hose, exhaust hose, is as rigid as, and it's very, very hard to bend. So I've just cut to the mustard, gone and cut a bit. Gonna have to try and see if I can get it to flex to fit where I want it to fit. If I can't, I might have to go for round 2. Oh, the wind today. Version 2 is going to be not an ideal situation where the exhaust is about 2 inches above the waterline, and I simply don't want that, or the predetermined waterline. Listen to this wind. Anyway, I'm going to go in and have a go at it. So my issue is I'm trying to retain as much storage space as I can. That's great to say that, but then you've got all these other factors, like this thing rotates 360 degrees, this thing rotates 360 degrees. The problem is the outlet, which is this beautiful piece of stainless, has to go on the wall and sticks out, and that's not adjustable. So I now need to make sure that I can get a piece of hose to go from here to here before I drill a hole in the side of the boat and temporarily mount all this stuff. And that is where I'm having my problem. I've had 3 or 4 goes at trying to work out where to fit this, and one of which was to have it against the wall here, which would have been beautiful because it was out of the way, it was tucked away. I could run the other exhaust, the intake, or the exhaust itself has to come from here and go all the way to the floor down to my NLP 75 and out, or actually at this height, which would be better. The issue with that is that I need to make this get out of the way. So I'm going to try and funnel this one down underneath and have this one around the top here to the outlet here, and that keeps everything in this quadrant of the sugar scoop. I've got a further problem, is that I've got all my fuel lines, fuel filler and everything coming down here, so I don't want to get too much up close to that side there, confusing and making it very difficult for access, because I'm going to have the splash stop up in there working its way, working its magic, and yeah, not a lot of space left for these massive hoses, these big 75mm internal diameter hose. They're basically 3 inch, I think they're 100mm in total. Not a lot of room for those to bend and sort of contort into the places I really wanted. One of the other issues that I'm considering, and this could be an issue, is that it's going to be mounted against the outside wall of the hull. Now that's going to create vibration. Also, it will be vibrating against this, so I may have to dampen that somehow. I'm not really sure, so I'm going to have to put a bracket in here. It comes with cable ties, which does my head in. I mean, why they can't put a stainless bracket on, but it's got a cable tie that holds there. There'll be another one up the top there. I'm going to have to put in a wooden mount at the back here to make sure that it sits out at the angle I need it, and hopefully I won't get too much vibration up here in the top of the lazarette here. I really don't want this vibrating as we're motoring along. It'd be pretty unpleasant, but anyway, at least it'll be behind you. Right, so this has to bend. Oh, that's horrible, because it's taking up half my freaking lazarette. If I do that, After a day of struggling, I moved over to the starboard side to look for a better solution. I've opted to mount the muffler securely on the bulkhead, facing aft, which has greatly simplified the install. This way the muffler and ultimately the outlet hose is a lower profile against the underside of the rear hatch, allowing for a neat install and without impeding access to the storage and the rudder system. This took a deal of time to configure, but I've decided it is the best position. However, it has made the outlet on the outboard side of the boat slightly lower than I would have liked. I just cannot believe something as good as that has a couple of cable ties to hold it in place. I'm going to make a stainless band to hold this in place because that's just not good enough. It's good for positioning, but ultimately I want something better. And this is just too important a part of the boat to have plastic cable ties on. Yeah, that's ridiculous. What do you do? Alright, it's come time to burrow a 100mm diameter hole in my otherwise watertight crash bulkhead. Now I've got to work out a way of sealing this exhaust hose. Now the outlet's going to be around about here. I want it right over in the corner here because that leads directly down to my waterlock muffler on the other side. So if I put it here, it'll give me the best clearance and also give me the ability to be able to bend it and keep the hose within the perimeter of this so it doesn't impede on the storage and access into this compartment. But by burrowing it through here, I'm also keeping it close to the chamfer panel, which is just on the other side, and that'll go straight down into the waterlock muffler. I will have to seal it somehow, and that could be potentially Sikaflex. Now I'm unsure as to how hot these exhaust hoses get, and what I don't want is that melting. And I'll have to do some research as to what you can seal it with. I'm imagining a good quality Sikaflex of 5200 or something to seal this in place. And obviously we're going to basically make sure that it's going to be sealed so that we still maintain the integrity of this watertight bulkhead. It's essentially a crash bulkhead. The whole back of this boat could be broken off or hit and hold and compromised. And I might lose the rudders, but I won't lose the boat because of this particular bulkhead here. And obviously we've got a bilge system down in the bottom here, and that's going to give me the ability to be able to drain any water that may enter this, at least, minor water. I'm not talking about, a complete flood, but a complete flood means that the rest of the boat has still got integrity. So I've been using a piece of shop vac hose to determine the length rather than just guessing it. I'm trying to measure it out, but anyway, so I'll stick that in there. And that's sort of giving me the idea if I can get this to fit without wasting too much material. Well, that just proves that's perfect. Oh, I've been up and down and in and out of this bastard 300 times in the last couple of days. It's killing me. But anyway, we're getting it done. So close to having a functioning exhaust. Unbelievable. So the port side exhaust fitting. So with all of the vibration that the muffler is obviously going to do with the gas and water flowing through it, I think there's potential for it to cut on this. I could just smooth this off and laminate it over, but I think I'll just buy a flange. I'm sure I can buy them for downpipes. They'll actually glue in there and create a nice soft smooth finish in there, like on both sides. So I'll have a look over that over the next few days. I'm not actually putting this in permanently yet. Now these bolts here are actually my temporary fit of the hot water system, so that's not in permanently. I can actually move that, but I've just hung it in there so I could get the geometry right for all this other stuff that I've got going here. Thanks for joining me this week, everyone. As you can see, there's a lot of projects going on concurrently. Next week, I'm going to be tackling the engine side of the exhaust and the water strainer and siphon vent install, and much more. Cheers, everyone. See you next week.